This is the last Curiosity Club at this location. Hand Supply is moving to Broadway and Gleason, and our next Curiosity Club, which is on October 7th, will be taking place in our garage on Gleason, which is really big and not as warm, like it's a little stifling sometimes. So just letting you know about that, and then I guess that's all that I have to say without. I'm just gonna keep talking. It's gonna get weird. All right, we are your hosts this evening. I am Tobias, and this is Will. Together, we have a number of curious and exciting topics to share with you.
As attendees of the Hand Supply Curiosity Club, you are all now members, provided you adhere to our philosophy, Ex Curiositas Scientia. We pledge to learn without prejudice in pursuit of our mutual goal, perpetual noviceship. We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually novice, and perpetually curious, and perpetually novice.
This is like the first time. We've been doing this for 4 years. This is like, I mean, literally a week from today would be 4 years, like 4 years.
Well, he was the epitome of what he was saying, so there you have it. It's perfect.
Totally. See, we stay bad at it. That's the whole key. That's what the professional novice is about.
That's what I do.
This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. The lightning bolt represents the receipt of knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination, the resonance of truth understood. It awakens and excites us and makes us hungry for more. And now let's give a warm Curiosity Club welcome to Jill Torberson of Weld Metalworks.
Hey, thanks for coming. Let's see. I'm Jill Torberson of Weld Metalworks. I believe you just found that out. And I'm going to talk tonight about, before I start talking, maybe I'll put on my glasses so I can see what I'm going to talk about. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Turn the fan off maybe, or that might help. There it goes. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? My thing with steelwork is creating large structures or even small, medium structures that are light and letting the steel actually create structure to enhance the lightness. So that's basically what this talk is about. And then some design influences. Thought it would be fun to rein in my design influences to the last 12 months of just little trips that I've done instead of going back in time for a long old time. So I'm going to talk about the design influence the last 12 months and break it into some categories of landscape, built environment, found visual influences, and architectural influences. And then if there's time permitting, which there probably will be, go into some of the mixed media sculptures I do and gallery work and public commissions, private commissions. So I chose this first slide because this kind of sums me up. I thought it's about 7 feet tall. That ball is it's a rubber ball, but I loved that it looked metallic. It looked like a big ball bearing, and I kind of created this structure so that the mass of the rods would equal the mass of the bearing in the, so it's suspended, it's light. And actually that whole piece, you could pick it up, it probably weighed 10 pounds, but it was, a good 7 feet tall. I think in design, it's always important to have really good spatial planning, which I'm very interested in doing with my work. This was a commission by the Portland General Electric Company, another linear work. When they asked me to do work for the hydroelectric office, I thought it'd be fun to work with line again, because we're in the city, we're on the grid, electricity runs through lines. And I also am intrigued by this pod form, which actually is like one of these. So these pods are actually 9 feet tall. They're about 4 feet wide and about a couple feet off the wall, maybe 2 feet off the wall. And that one on the right with all the spikes, this is a detail of that. And this is a detail from down below, as if you're underneath it. One fun thing about this project it was a big open space where you'd walk in, and they had, the pieces would have been on the back wall. But you could also stand on a balcony and see them. You could also stand below them. So that was kind of a nice way to fill that space. It was a big wall. These are also big. These are tumbleweeds. I make these all the time. Just more rod work, more linear work, a nice balance between space and line again. That big one is actually 7 feet in diameter. This is not where they go in the landscape. These are supposedly going to eventually go to Eastern Oregon. The other thing I like about making these tumbleweeds is they read as if they're balls. So people somehow want to interact with them, and they want to roll them, and they want to play with them. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition to have the steel made into like a toy ball for the yard. Lightness and fabrication, again, these are nesting tables I built. Actually, I got a root canal out of these. It's a pretty good trade. I love my dentist. So my approach to fabrication is also, it's artistic and structural. I mean, it has to be if it's fabrication, right? But the artistic approach, I love to have heavier planes of steel to kind of seemingly float on a lighter surface, such as these skinny little half-inch square rod legs. That's something I do. I love the design aesthetic of the Scandinavian design and the 1950s hairpin legs, you know what those are? Those metal legs that hold like big slabs of wood sometimes. Love that. And these, the tops of these are called drop sheets, which are leftovers or drops from industrial processes where whatever the negative space is there was a part that someone needed laser cut, and that's left over. So I buy those by the pound and use those a lot. I used to use them a lot more, and now I'm more into hand building things. The last picture of fabrication it's just hot off the press, a fence I did this summer, but you know, I guess I wanted to say, I don't know, that to do custom fabrication, you have to be able to build things. It seems obvious, but everything has to be, all the posts have to be straight. Everything has to be level and plumb. It has to fit in the environment. Because then you can get away with your abstract design, you know, and then I think the abstraction has to have that framework in order to look right and to be good work. So now I'm going into the landscape minimalism. Dun, da, da, dum. I just rented a car and drove out to Montana for a week, and it took me forever because I kept stopping and taking photographs because it was so beautiful there. I grew up in the Midwest, and I just love it when you're driving in Eastern Oregon or anywhere, and you're driving, and there's a big field of yellow and a blue sky or a gray sky, and that's all you see. It's just such a neat feeling. So this is just an influence in minimalism for me, and a lot of driving, a lot of stopping, and this particular picture I didn't stop while I was driving. I held the phone out the window. Probably not very smart, but look at this picture. This was in south of Great Falls, Montana on a highway. I can't remember which highway. This structure up here is actually about, I don't know, 8 foot tall, and it's a triangle shape this way, and it goes along the highway. It's a snow break. And it went on for miles. And I couldn't really stop. I wanted to stop. But I think that's just so beautiful. So landscapes really influence me. The picture on the right is a field in Ohio on a bike tour, and then the one on the left is first slide, I guess, of some of my gallery work. That's one of my landscape pieces. That's in a series of 5. It's a little bigger than that, but not much. But I love to take the natural patinas of the steel and let them sometimes just speak for themselves. And my next love of landscape comes into dun, da, da, dum. I didn't even plan to do that, but I guess that's my segue. Climbing. I just started climbing a few years ago. And so this is on Mount St. Helens this spring. And when you're up there, it's like being on the moon. When you're up on any, I don't know if any of y'all climb, but it's just a lovely, lovely environment. It's minimalistic. You're working really hard, and you get up and you get this reward to be in places where a lot of people don't go. This is also St. Helens. Mount Adams is in the background. And I love it that you just have these blues, blacks, and whites. You know, but then within that, you see all those colors and all the transparency. And I included this picture especially, as you can see, if you look down that path, there's a little person walking. So this person, I mean, I don't know, that could have taken, what, 15 minutes maybe to walk that far? I don't know. And as they're walking through there, they're in this field of white. You know, and within the white, you're seeing the silver and black, and you're looking up and seeing things around you. But to me, this is just like experiencing Rothko on a big scale. And I never understood Rothko till I went and stood in front of one. And then you feel the vibrations, you know, you feel the light, you feel the color. This is just on a bigger scale. So, and then I was always one of these little kids that, I don't know, I would look at the ceiling in my house and I'd see faces. You know, I'd always see things in the patinas and the things around me. And I've done a series of work on galvanized steel, which, if, you know, this is actually a nice, I brought this for many reasons, galvanized steel with natural patinas on it. This is called the precipice. A lot of times when I'm working on galvanized, I there's, you know, all this demarcation in the metal, and I just fool with that and let it influence what I'm going to do. I included this slide. I thought this was really fun, that the patinas on the Mount St. Helens from that photo are so similar to this piece on the left that I did. It's the blank slate. So it was just another fun example of finding a beautiful piece of galvanized steel, and there was this hint of a white square in the middle, and I immediately wanted to do a piece of notebook paper. Just, you know, like the notebook paper when you're in high school and you have the loose leaf and you're tearing it out. I love that imagery, that really naive, simple, everyday imagery, but put into a different context. So, in that piece I had intended to put numbers and letters, and I was going to write things on the paper, and then it really was just so done. It was done. I had to hold myself back. So this is the built environment in the landscape. This is a picture from, do you all know where this is from? It's Oregon. Tillamook Blimp Hangar Museum. There's one big one up there that still exists, and there's one that was burned down. Hangar A was burned down in 1992 because they decided to store hay in this building, and it combusted, which is a tragic loss for architecture. But we still have another hangar. But this is left over, and another example of me telling my friend to pull over. Wait, I need to take a picture of this. Oh, I love that. It's just such a perfect scale. This is also on the grounds of that. This remains, unfortunately now it's surrounded by another plant, so you can see the modern, you know, silo next to it. But I believe this was a helium room from that hangar A. It's so beautiful. Once again, it could be standing in front of Rothko to me. But I like to take these photographs and then edit them. I don't show photography. I'm not a photographer at all. But I like the composition. I like the colors. I like all, you know, all that. So the red and white is from the Tillamook hangar somewhere. And then that's one of in the series of landscapes that I do. A lot of my work I use a red thread. That white on the bottom of that is actually concrete. This was kind of fun too. This piece on the right, I was just in my shop one day working, and I looked on the floor, and that was laying on the floor like that. So I just took a picture. I didn't build it. I should have made it. It's so pretty. It was so pretty. I'm like extra bonus prize from working. It's, you know, on the floor. Just then, you know, that's kind of my design. I just like more galvanized steel in a bigger fashion. I love this building. This is an example of me not being a photographer, but big galvanized steel building in the middle of the hot day, in the middle of a black, you know, paved parking lot. Oh, I loved it. And I love it that it looks like something a kid would draw. You know, it's really fun, but it's really massive and industrial, and the patinas on it, when you get close, there's just so much going on. So more works on galvanized. Montana again. I drove a mile past this building, and then I turned around. Took me forever. I don't even know if it's cordwood. I don't know if that's stone. The building, and it actually was on a steep hill. And behind it was a thunderstorm. Another child's drawing of a building, right? I mean, that's just such a simple house. But it's so sad, that house, to me, and there's something desolate about it. And it wasn't in ruin. It was actually well cared for. But Follow it up with these two images of some paintings. I like to paint on the steel as well. And these are just about ancestry. So the red, I don't know if you can see its bones, little dog bone shapes, you know, and then just a little church in the house underneath. And I just made the sky. I love that horizon line. Real simple stuff. So now we're moving into the big city. Are you ready? We're out of Montana. We're out of Oregon. St. Basil, Roman Catholic Church of Los Angeles, 1969. Does anyone know this building? You do, all right. Yeah, I was in LA a couple months ago, and another example of pull over right now. And came upon this church. This is the stained glass from this church. And it went up, you know, 3 stories. And it was all structural. I mean, some of the points came out, you know, yay far. Just really fragmented. This woman, it was a woman, Claire Falkenstein, who designed the glass for the building. And she also designed all the ironwork and the doors for this building. Yeah, it was just an amazement to me. So the glass from the inside reads real flat. It reads just like a church. But the light is just incredible. I also include this picture because of its minimalistic simplicity. Tadao Ando, I don't know if anyone knows him, he's a Japanese architect. He did a lot of churches. It's very reminiscent. I love the fractured thing. I think it's because I grew up in a modern Catholic church too. This church just rocked my world. But this picture on the right is the actual window. The picture on the left, the picture on the right is a detail of the window. Small detail. I can't even imagine building those. So this is some of the ironwork she had designed. I think that's just another window. But when I saw this work, I was like, oh, wow. That's what I do. maybe I was her, I don't know. I would only hope. But so the ironwork on the right. No, wait, I'm confusing you guys. Just don't listen to me. I made the chalice. I can tell you that. That's something I was commissioned from a church in Portland, Unitarian church. But when I saw this steel work, I thought, wow, I got that right. That's good. This is the last image from the church. This one here was an actual wall that was about 3.5 feet high by about 6 feet long, like a stem wall. These triangles were about this wide open, and it was probably a foot deep, and it was just a series of those built in a wall in a perfect place in the church. It was stunning, just completely stunning. And the tape measure piece is just a detail of one of my pieces. So I'm really interested in fractured imagery. So the other great love of my trip to Los Angeles was the famous Watts Towers. Have you all seen those? Or have you seen them in person? It's fantastic. It's, you know, everyone says, oh, you're going to LA, oh, be sure you go to the Getty Museum. Okay, I'll go to the Getty, and that'll be fine, it's great. I went to the Getty, and I was just kind of bored. This sounds terrible. I hope lightning doesn't strike me, but it didn't do anything for me. And then I begged my friend to drive me to the Watts Towers, and I started crying. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. So this man, Simon Rodia, he took 33 years to build these towers. He was a mason. He was from Italy. He was a construction worker. And he just would work all day, and he'd go work on his towers at night and build these darn towers. He bought a little sliver of land, a little triangular piece of land in Watts. So what he would do is he would take rebar and wrap the rebar in wire, and then he had his own concoction of concrete, and he'd put that on the wire, and then he'd embed it with all these porcelain pieces. He used bottles, tiles, seashells, figurines, anything he could find that he could put in there. The way he constructed, and he pretty much built these alone. The way he constructed them is he'd build a rung, and then he'd stand on it, and he'd build the next rung until they went all the way up. The tallest one is 99 feet, and the foundation for that is 14 inches in concrete. The amazing thing about that, too, is that they wanted, of course, you know, as cities will want, they wanted to tear it down at one point. So there was an endowment. They did a series of stress tests on these structures, and they did not collapse. They did not fall down. So, yay! They got to stay. But I mean, you have to see them and look it up on the internet. There's some videos. All the detail. I mean, it's little bitty pieces this big all over these things, which relates to me, back to me. This is a piece I did several years ago called Consumed, and it's just about when you're actually completely concentrating and working, that's all you're doing, and it's a great feeling. So the heart inside of that, the round thing that's the heart, is a big ball of metallic tape measures. That was fun. This is just one more example near of my work that was reminiscent of Rhodia in a way. I'm really, clearly I'm into organization. This is it's called Words, what is it called? Thoughts versus Words. So the white panel is actually gauze, and it has a steel armature behind it, and sewn to it are antique stencils from a French flea market. And they're little stencils, are about this big. And then the piece on the other side, the silver, is those exact letterings placed in that exact order, in that exact spacing. So it's just about, you know, when you're thinking, things are a little bit ethereal. Wow, okay. And then what comes out of your mouth, or what are your concrete, you know, thoughts versus that, so. Those are my watchtowers. Those are about, you know, between 8 and 9 feet tall each. They live in Salem at an architectural firm now. It's kind of fun. So the next thing from my trip to LA is Schindler. Anyone know Schindler? He worked for Frank Lloyd Wright for a while, but he was better. No, I guess I'm going to get struck with lightning for all of my architectural. So the Schindler House was built in 1921. What was radical about this place, also, you know, Simon Rhodia, he was radical. He built these towers. No one told him how. He just did it. Schindler, same time frame. He wants to build a concrete tilt-up structure. Oh, wow, you can't do that. The city of LA was just not about him doing that. It took him several trips to the planning committee, and they finally permitted it if they could stop building at any time, because they just were so sure that that kind of construction would never last and would never work. So the other radical thing about this residence is he built it for 2 families to live in, his family and another colleague of his. So the house was built communally, but it was built with no bedrooms, no formal kitchen, no formal dining room. It was just a crazy kind of bungalow layout. The sleeping rooms were sleeping porches that were completely protected from the elements. But what I love about this house is the sense of scale. This house was actually built by Schindler with the intent that you would sit in the house as opposed to walk around and, you know, except when you walk in, the ceilings are pretty low. It's a little bit claustrophobic even for me, but once you sit down, it's as if that space transforms into perfection in scale. It's kind of a neat thing that way, you know. This is some concrete work. These are my photos, so they're pretty horrible. But that's a bathtub in the sink. I love the placement of that. I mean, it's just so unusual. It was so unexpected. And the plumbing, it's just a very radical house. This picture I showed to illustrate a window. So this house has a series of these 4-inch lights that were in the concrete. I highly recommend going to this house. It's in a state of decay. It's very sad. So this is just an example of one thing I like to do is, I do like the straight lines, I do like the organization, but this has a little nod of the botanical at the top. But it was a nice solution to the space. This is the money shot from the Schindler house. All the furniture he designed and built. There were a lot of indoor-outdoor fireplaces. The dining room table. It's lovely how it just transcends into the wall, into a bookshelf. It was a house for sitting and living and thinking. So as I said earlier, he worked for Frank Lloyd Wright. He actually designed the Hollyhock House in Los Angeles that Frank Lloyd Wright is credited for. But this is a house in Springfield, Ohio. I was in Springfield, Ohio last year about this time, and it was a big snowstorm. I borrowed my son's car to drive to go see this house, and I got there and no one was there. I went in the gift shop, no one was there. So I just walked around up into the offices and scared this woman half to death. So what are you doing here? You're the first person here all day. And I said, I've got to see the house. And she said, well, you know, I'm getting ready to leave, but I'll just show you how to shut the house up. You just go on in and just shut the door when you leave. So I went in that house and I stayed for 2 hours and I went in every closet. I sat in every chair you're not supposed to sit in. I did it all. I washed my hands in the sink. It was just so great to be in that space with nobody there. No one talking, no music, nothing. So this house was designed right after Frank Lloyd Wright got back from Japan in 1905. So it's really Soji screen-esque, which is a perfect marriage of design with a prairie house. Prairies are designed with those large overhanging porches to the ground, the inside being outside, all that stuff. But to enhance it with the Japanese style, it's fantastic. And I was influenced by so many things in this house. This is the last picture though. Craftsmanship, everything, every detail was there. Everything was in balance, everything was in its place, everything was proportionally outstanding, and this is just a corner treatment of the buffet. Beautiful. So one thing I like to do when I'm working in commission work and design, I'd like to try to design things for people that are going to stand the test of time. They're going to be interesting, they're going to be a little modern, they're going to fit the space. This is a well for a fountain I built. So I thought this was a good place to put it after Schindler and Frank Lloyd Wright. Similar aesthetic, similar linear work, but in steel. This is the top of the fountain. So there's a big water feature above that, and the water drips down through those orbs and tumbleweeds. And the tumbleweeds change all day. They make great shapes on the wall, you know. It's kind of a fun fountain. So that's kind of the end of my influences and why I do what I do. And now I just have pictures of artwork that I've done. So y'all just interrupt me if you have questions about any of the work, or I can keep expounding on it. This was a piece, one in a series. I think I did 20 of these tiny little house structures. They were about yay high. This is called Running in Circles. So that's old work. I do a lot of mixed media work. It's rather personal work, really. It doesn't sell necessarily. It's fun to show in a gallery, but this is a suspended wishbone in a box. Those are acupuncture needles. And so it's kind of fun because the wishbone will go in and out of the needles. Heartstrings. I love using red thread in my work. I use it on steel. I use it in mixed media. Red's my signature highlight color. It's just such a powerful color. I love architecture, clearly. These are a couple of architectural pieces I did recently for a show at Gardino Gallery. The one with the brown is called Words I Should Have Said, Things I Should Have Said. So once again, I took the imagery of a notebook paper. Or I actually took real notebook paper, old, just plain as can be, and I dyed it with walnut paste, dried it out. And then I did a little stack of it and tied it in a little bundle. So, you know, and then the words, the ideas are floating again like the other piece. So I think that's kind of fun. It's the idea of being, what are there words on those pieces of paper? Are they blank? Or what is that? What are they trying to say? It creates a tension. The other one's just don't throw stones at glass houses. So, yeah, it's funny they're about that size as well. It's hard to see this. There's a house in a bird cage. In the house is a cage with a wishbone in it. It's kind of all caged up. This was a project, it was a commission. It was very meticulous. I took a violin, I took all the varnish off the violin, did a reverse image transfer on the violin of this human heart, then I painted the heart on, then I revarnished the thing. And the back is the poem, How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways. But I love taking everyday objects and transforming them, putting them together with unexpected imagery. Are y'all bored?
No.
So this is the next realm of work, public work. This is a commission I had from Portland General Electric Company 2 summers ago. The sense of scale there. The piece was actually 8 feet high it ended up being 60 feet long. And my shop is smaller than this space. So I built these 5 foot by 8 foot panels on the floor, and then when I'd get them built, I'd call my buddy, my welder buddy, who was a neighbor, retired PG welder, Ken, come on over, and he'd come over and we'd drag him out to my driveway over a series of like 2 weeks. It was kind of fun. And then they moved him over there, and we set him up and welded him on. The idea of this, you know, public art, I don't do a lot of public art because there's committees, it's just a pain. And they always say to a welder, well, is it going to be sharp? Is someone going to get cut? Is it going to be heavy? Is it going to fall on somebody? You know, but this worked out. This is fine. But interesting side about this that I just remembered is the art had to be placed on the inside of the fence because they were afraid people would climb it on the outside. But I pointed out to them that they could climb the fence without the art. So it's on the inside. So the idea of this visually, though, was a cityscape. And I think the Power Building's pretty. That's just me. So I didn't want to just hide it. It's there. It's not going away. This was a really fun commission. This was a Truett Brothers cannery in Salem, Oregon, organic cannery. They wanted me to build them a giant fork for the Seattle Sculpture Garden. They had an event there, and they wanted me to build it out of cans, which I said, no, I won't. Don't ever hire me, I'm paying. But I built it out of forks. It took, I mean, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of forks it took. But I took a kitchen fork, I took it to Kinko's, and I blew it up to 8 feet. They were very annoyed with me. I'm like, no, it needs to be bigger. We're just blowing up this fork. And that was my template, and then I just built it. And I built it with no skeleton inside. I used the forks as skeletons, so I bent them and manipulated them. So it's a really kind of purely a fork made of forks.
Where did you source the forks?
Boxer Northwest in the Pearl. Sakhalin Salmon Conservancy. I'm sure you can all read that. That's just on the bench. I just thought that was kind of fun to show you that. It's 48 inches long. It looks like, what did I write on there? 7 inch tall. There's a cat in there. So you can kind of see the sense of scale. So yeah, this is somewhere in Russia. I cut those out by hand, which was, now I would never do that, but it took forever. It was pretty good. Hoyt Arboretum, that's just hot off the press. Once again, site-specific work for a public place. They wanted something botanical, so we all settled on this pod form once again, my famous pod form. But it's quite nice. Eventually, we're going to wrap the building with leaves. And then down below, there's a rock garden that we built a fence. I built a fence, and they installed of the same pattern. It's really quite nice.
Is it sharp?
It might be sharp. More commission work. Oh, what is this called? Hollyfield. It's a Section 8 housing in Lake Oswego. In the old part of Lake Oswego, they're pretty much in the woods down there. It's a really beautiful setting, and they remodeled this building kind of in a mid-century Scandinavian design, so they wanted to hire me to do some feature work for the front entry. So I proposed the piece on your, whatever side that is for you. On your right is, it's the sketch for those 9-foot panels. Those were heavy. But yeah, I think it's nice. It's woodsy. Merritt, yep.
With the commissions, what you're talking about with the salmon, the Russian salmon one, and cutting the letters and realizing that you don't want to cut letters covering it, right? So does that come up for you a lot in your commission work, where you either are setting limitations or boundaries for the people that are making the commission, or you come across something that becomes like really daunting, and then from that point forward, you set limitations?
You know, it's interesting because anyone that does custom work, you do it because you want to do the piece.
Right.
You do it for the money, or you do it for the legacy. You know, you find a reason to do it. This thing, there's hundreds of these little shapes. Okay, they came in a straight rod. I had to cut them all. I had to bend them all by hand on a plumber's vise, because that's how I do it. Then I had to form them all. Then I had to weld them all. Then I had to grind them all. I mean, this took like hours and hours, and I did it to do it. I got paid, but not what, not for what the time is worth. I guess it depends on the client. Like for me, this was something I'm very pleased to have public work in Portland in a public park. It's a big deal for me. It feels great. So I just did it. Damn them! They knew they could get me to do it. Yeah, you have to rein people in. This is a hard thing with custom work in any field that you're in. It's like people want something, but they don't really understand what it takes to create that object. One time I had a commission to do. This guy came to my house. Oh, I've always wanted a brand. He had his brand he wanted. He's not a cowboy. He just wanted a brand. Had it designed since high school. I'm like, yeah, I can make that for you. No problem. So I made it. I have blacksmithing skills. I have the tools. Make him this beautiful brand. And his wife comes to pick it up, and I give her a bill for, I think it was nothing. It was like $120. $120! Oh my God! And she didn't take it home. She's like, no, I'm not paying for that. And I said, fine, don't pay. That's fine. I'll keep it. It's cool. But her husband, he came back and bought it. But people just don't understand what it takes to create a custom piece. I guess I'm probably not very good at drawing the line. I'm getting better. I say no, but not very often. Did I even answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the Mary Hill Museum of Art. And this is a fertility petroglyph. They commissioned, well, actually, I was invited to a sculptural invitational, and they kept this piece in their collection, which is pretty cool. So now it looks much prettier. It's really dark. The big wheel is it's a wagon wheel that I bought in the gorge at a scrapyard. I know all the good scrapyards. Don't ask me where they are. This was also at the museum, though. Now this lives in my backyard. It was peacock feathers.
That last piece, was that just stuck into the ground straight down?
It's in concrete. Yeah, it's got a footing. But yeah, it just tapers straight. Once again, it's my whole thing. I like things to look like they're floating, so. I reject big bases on things. Private commission work. This is my thing I finished last week. It's not a very good picture. It's a beautiful fence. Barbara, she was going to come tonight, but she had an emergency root canal today. I thought, well, that's a pretty good excuse. Yeah, I should have. Hey, you took care of my dentist. She's an artist, though, and so she was easy to work for. Lad's addition on one of those rose gardens. Big fence, 90 feet of fencing, couple gates. What's nice about this is like when everything's super plumb and square, you can do pretty fabrication. This I just included as just, things like this take a while to make. They look simple and they look perfect and oh, that looks great. Oh yeah, all those lines are absolutely perfect. That took forever. But darn, it looks good. But once again, to see the raw product on the bench versus finished is kind of fun. I always love to take my stuff into a gallery after I build it, you know, because it looks 10 times better.
Is it the actual squaring of it that is?
Well, it's just when you use heat on metal, metal does weird things. It shifts and moves, and you know, so there's a lot of clamping. To do that, all I did was do parallel lines, and I found a certain bar, and I clamped the bar in between so nothing would move. You know, it's just a lot of handwork. You know, and you know, oh yeah, I can get that at Home Depot. Okay, go ahead. Guy, am I bitter? No, I'm not. This is my favorite fence I ever built. This is a mid-century house in southwest Portland. They had a big, beautiful, flat, one-story house with hilly, rocky terrain. And this was great. This is just one tiny section of the job, but I love it. I love that motion. Ice cream cone, giant ice cream cone in the Pearl District. I can't remember, what's it called? I don't even remember. If you think it's easy to build an ice cream cone out of steel, you're really mistaken. I was like, trying to bend this stuff in around, you know. But it's nice. I like it. I included this slide as a commission work because this is completely out of anything I've ever done. This nice guy wanted a Chinese phoenix. And this is what I came up with, a lot of plasma cutting. I actually formed contours in it on the anvil, cold formed it. Built, all the feathers were hand cut, but then bent on the anvil. It was about 4 feet high. But I look at that, I'm like, I made that? That's just so weird. Repeat. Okay, wait for it, Mike Barber. Oh, Mike Barber's security door. That's fun. It was a scarecrow. She lives in Wasco. So I should rush through these more gallery. I'll quickly, this is AIA, American Institute of Architects. Jeff Schnabel and I had a show there this spring. He and I do a lot of shows together. This is a Mark Woolley show a couple years ago. Jeff is an architect, a professor of architecture at PSU, and he works in encaustic. And he and I have exactly the same design sense. It's uncanny. We can go in a room of 500 paintings or pieces, and we'll each pick the same favorite and the same worst every time. And he and I discovered the art of Leon Ferrari and Myra Schindel. They're Latin American artists. They worked in the 60s through the 80s. They were pals. This is some of their work. And he and I, we were completely influenced by them. So we did a series of work based on what we saw. So this is in Jeff and Paula's house. These are encaustics, yay big. And this is a railing I built based on that. And it's to code, just so you know. So this is one of Jeff's encaustics on that series. His clearly architectural influence comes out, but it's fun to do the architectural drawings in the wax. I think it's a pretty interesting juxtaposition of materials and ideas. I included this just as an example of the fun thing about gallery shows for me is that you can do whatever the hell you want. I don't care if it sells. I get to come up with ideas and just make them. So this was my first opportunity to put steel on concrete. I make a slurry and use it as a paint, and it was fun, you know. Those are all long gone. More panels, counterweight. Hey, that's this.
So you said that was some sort of a natural patina. Can you talk about that?
Natural patina?
Well, what is that, on the galvanized? Or,
On this?
no, this one that you used.
Oh, so yeah, these, you know, I go to these scrap yards and you find these piles of steel that are just, you know, all stuck together. And sometimes they have mild steel, which is the rusty steel in between them, or they'll have just pallets of galvanized, and they weather, and they make all these patterns. This is all just natural. I didn't do any of this. But you know, when you hit it with the heat, it does crazy things too. It changes. So I'm constantly looking now for patinas in steel like this. I did do all this scratching in there. I wanted this to be, the idea is like a skyscraper and a counterweight, you know, with the horizon line. The red line again comes in. But yeah, that's pretty, all that black's, and it's pretty much a natural patina I just excavated and then drew on it with graphite.
Do you do any of your own patinas?
Nope. Just concrete. No, I'm not into the chemical thing. I don't have room. I don't have the desire. That's 8 feet tall, 2 peas in a pod. I probably should get moving on. It's 6:51. Geez, you guys. I love architecture. I've done a series of buildings. These buildings were actually just linked at the bottom like this, so you can move them around. Tape measures in my work always signify time passing, and then there's that just lead weight. So it's not exactly a happy piece, but it's pretty. 2 birds, 1 stone. Also kinetic, so you could pick it up. Tree. Oh, we're almost at the end. This is my messy shop. This is a picture my buddy took last week doing some ridiculous project. It's very small. And I included this picture because I am in love with St. John's Bridge, and I think we all should be. Yeah, it's just an idea, just like bringing it back home. What do I find? Every time I go by this bridge, my heart just expands. I just can't believe it. It's everything I love in art right there. So do you have any questions?
How did you get started
In steel, I got started in steel. I think I've always loved fire. As a little girl, I was always the girl that was sitting close to the fireplace, poking in there, and I was always a little girl building firecrackers out of firecrackers and blowing things up. And I've always loved fire, and life goes on. I studied music, got my degree in horn. As musicians and artists will, I got a job in a brewery. And I was doing all the draft work for the brewery, and I had to have things designed to move the beer around the plant. And so I'd give these drawings to the welders that worked there, and I would watch them make these objects that I drew, and it was like a eureka moment. I loved it right away. So I quit that job and took a class at the community college. And a lot of times, I teach welding as well. A lot of times people think they're going to love it. Oh, it's going to be great. They hate it. It's loud, it's dirty, it's sharp, it's heavy, all those things, all those verboten things. But I loved it. So I just kept going. And then I have some welder friends that have helped me along the way, teach me things. Yeah. Yes, sir. You in front.
A couple of things. So the Lloyd Arboretum was where my first job was, and
where was it?
Up at the Lloyd Arboretum.
Oh, cool.
The visitor center. And the second thing was for years and years I did parade floats and did the wireframe. That was what I did with the prop welder. And so it's really interesting to see how our way of doing things and your way of doing things evolved. I totally want to BS with you after this. But it's funny because we have our own I can see in the company, because it's not a super old company, it's maybe 25 years old, but the progression of their weird offshoots, and we have these weird wrenches that everybody made on their own. It was their special wrench for bending the. And it's just so cool to see your shop and see how you hand cut it, and you're issues with like, how the fuck am I going to do this? Like, I don't know, and then you create some goofy way of doing it, and it's so neat how it's all different and it all works.
That happens all the time. I'll get a commission, and I like to look at people's art in their house. I like to look at the design of their house. I like to pick their brains, and then I'll do some drawing for them, and they'll go, oh, that's perfect, and then I'll have to go, oh. Okay, now I get to figure out how to make that. And I figured it out every time, so. But, yeah.
Two questions. First of all, where are those great scrapyards?
You'll never know.
The second one is your shop in a residential area? You have to deal with neighbors and noise?
I have great neighbors. Plus, I'm very respectful. I work during the day. I mean, a lot of being an artist is sitting at the damn desk and doing bids and da-da-da. But so I'm not out there every day, but I only work in that shop Monday through Friday, unless I'm in a super big bind, and then I'll work on the weekends. But my neighbors are great. I live actually in southeast Portland, Woodstock, which would lead me to tell y'all I'm doing the Portland Open Studio Tour this year. So check that out. Feel free to come by the studio, and you can see how all this giant stuff happens in such a small space. We'll just mess with your minds. But the neighbors are good, and I'm respectful. I don't work at night. At night, they have to be annoyed by my French horn playing. I'm a terrible neighbor. Just be glad I don't live next to you.
I have power tools and equipment, and I have to kind of toe that line a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, unless you want to buy a shop or work in the woods, for example. So yeah, and the next, I guess, quickly I'll tell you, the next show I have the Open Studios, and I think I'm tentatively on for the Jupiter in December. Don't know, but I'm definitely on for the Jupiter in May and June next year with Jeff Schnabel, my colleague. And he and I also have a show at Gardino in February. And I brought my iPad. If you all want to, I can open a page in my mail. And if you want to put your email in there, then I'll get you on an emailing list to let you know what's going on. So any more questions?
How do you teach welding?
How do I teach welding? You mean my approach or where?
Personally, or you get an umbrella of an organization?
Oh, I teach at Portland State University in the School of Architecture specifically. So I teach metal shop to architecture students, which is really fun because architecture students have an attitude. And they come in and they're all in their Carhartts and clothes. They're all just, and safety glasses, oh yeah, you know. And then I'll do my little talk and then, okay, everybody, put on your stuff. And they're just like, oh, really, okay. And then I take a grinder and I just cut a piece of metal. And every class, every time without fail, they all go. And then, by the end of the class, though, they're all in there making, so it's an 11-hour course over a weekend. And it's so fun to watch them go from being jackasses to being scared to just, oh, this is great, when you teach them how to run a bead with Oxy, they can't believe how great it is. So that's where I teach. People always ask me to teach, but too much liability, I think. Unfortunately, I say community college is a great place to go.
What do you weld? TIG, MIG?
I do MIG and I do Oxy, acetylene, and I also have a forge, so I do a little bit of blacksmithing, and stick. So, yeah. Do you weld?
Used to.
No.
Yeah. I was trying to be an industrial welder.
Didn't happen for you?
Well, I decided I wanted to be an accountant instead.
A sensible choice. Anyone else have any questions?
It seems like you're you have a really clear sort of design, or clear creative vision of the direction that you want to go. And I think that it was really interesting to see the Chinese piece that was so clearly just a completely different direction from what I am interpreting as your vision from this presentation. But I just wonder, I wonder again about when you're working with people on commission work, how you sort of negotiate that, when they come to you with things that are completely just not corollary with your vision.
You'll think this is pretty funny. The only thing I won't do is work with bicycle parts. People, oh, well, we'd like a gate made of, bicycles, that'd be so cool. I'm like, well, no. Anything else I'm game, you know? But I'm pretty good at talking people into doing what I want them to do. It's terrible, but I mean, there's compromise. And I've done things that I wouldn't show you. Gates with flowers, and, you know, but that, yeah, there's always a compromise. But it's initially, you know, you just meet with the clients, talk to them, see what they're like. The worst, I have to say, since I'm going on about this, is when you meet with clients that are a married couple and they haven't talked about what they want, and then they fight, and then they never, you know, that's always a horrible situation. So don't ever do that to a designer. Thank you. If you haven't learned anything else tonight, this is what you've learned. Well, thank you guys for coming out to hear me talk about art.
I've got more than usual here just because of the move and everything. So bear with me. We return October 7th. With our second installment in the Process Praxis Pitfalls series created specifically for Design Week Portland. A panel of Curiosity Club alumni will share tales of tribulation and triumph. God, my writing, I'm like, it's ridiculous. Alliteration. All right, from their personal career and creative past. This year's focus, the moments of realization that you have arrived on your chosen path and heard your calling, or the moment you've come to realize that you're several rungs up the ladder you didn't want to climb. Our speakers will be Dee Williams, who built the tiny houses from Portland Alternative Dwellings. Nico Cortellis, who's here from Plasma Magazine, is also giving a talk following that about its philatelic atrocities. It's going to be real good. Dave Selden from 33 Bucks, who makes the tasting books with the flavor wheels for wine and chocolate and beer and cigars. Niall McGovey from Hovercraft Amplifiers, who built amplifiers, and illustrator and educator Kate Bingham Burr. So you can RSVP for that one through the Curiosity Club website or also through the Design Week Portland website. There are currently, we didn't put a cap on it, which may be a mistake. We have like 72 people RSVP for it currently. And I'm expecting that it'll probably get to about 100. So it would help us a lot if you do want to come, like RSVP, so we're prepared as much as we can be for that. But the garage at least is a lot bigger than this, so that'll be good. So also just know that it's going to be at the new space, which will be it's at 723 Northwest Gleason. It's right after you come off the Broadway Bridge. There's the passport place with the while you wait sign. It's really great. Awesome. Okay, we'd also like to invite you to Hand Eye Supply's official reopening party, which is not this Thursday, but the next, October 2nd. We'll have some food and drinks, and you can check out our new space, which we are like literally killing ourselves to put together. And my friend's band Psycho Magic is going to play, which is kind of like surfy doo-wop garage stuff. It's very great. And it takes place at 417 Northwest Broadway, which is the other entrance. So come and have some food here and listen to some music and free food and check out our new space. And that all being done, let's have another round of applause for Joe. And if you have more questions and want to sign up for email list, get information about the upcoming shows, you should come up with